Hi, my name is Ken.
And my name is Jason.
And today on Two Guys and Some Cardboard Unboxed, we're going to talk about gaming organization. How do you keep this mess of tokens and cards organized? So hello, loyal listeners. This is another episode of Two Guys and Some Cardboard Unboxed. We're going to apologize posthumously for the quality we've been having lately. I know the last episode we posted up, the quality was a little bad, kind of on both of our sides, but we're trying out some new software now. We are not responsible if this makes the podcast any worse, but if it makes it better, we'll take all the credit. So, there's that.
I'm going to take all the credit anyway, so...
well, Jason's going to take all the credit. I'm going to go cry in a corner or something. In the meantime, though, we've got some events coming up. Jason, did you want to take that?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have a date for Summer Boardgasm 2012. So that's going to be held on July 14th this year. It's going to go from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. this time, so people can sleep in a little bit more.
Yay!
Yeah. And also, we haven't confirmed it yet, but we're guessing we're probably going to be doing it at Quantum Frontier again, because that seems to be working out pretty well for us. So anybody in the Halifax or surrounding areas, circle that date on your calendar, and there will be more information forthcoming about that. As far as other groups, Quantum Frontier is hosting a board game night again on April 17th.
That's actually the board game night, that the first Tuesday and I think the third Tuesday of every month, and that's the last one for April. They're of course going to have two more next month as well. However, through Halifax Game Night, they actually have Let It Roll coming up. So this is actually an event that they do fairly frequently. That is going to be coming up on April 21st. Basically, they have a tournament, and all the proceeds for this tournament, you have to buy into it to get in and all that. All the proceeds for the tournament actually go towards buying games for the IWK. I don't know if this is... I don't think it's a Child's Play thing specifically. I think they're just directly buying games and giving them to the IWK, so that's pretty cool. I believe there's a couple... They do a couple of these in the run of the year. If you go to the Halifax Game Night's website, they have all the information up there, so you should be able to find that no problem. And past that, we didn't really have too much time to research too many of the local events. By the way, if anybody is listening to this and is local to the Halifax area, if you have local events, you can always email us, and we'll try to include them in our next podcast if we have a chance. But in the meantime, though, on May 5th, there is Free Comic Book Day. This isn't necessarily related to board games, but it's sort of like Nerd Easter, and I kind of feel weird if I didn't mention it. Also, how did you not know about this already? I don't know. You have to ask yourself that, not me. So again, fairly short for local event news, but that's all fine and dandy. Jason, did you want to talk about some board game news?
Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to mention. First of all, the Lord of the Rings The Nazgul board game is getting pushed back a bit. And for those of you who do not know about this, it's being done by WizKids. It's a cooperative game, semi-cooperative really, where each player plays one of the Nazgul, and they are trying to stop the Fellowship of the Ring from getting the One Ring to Mount Doom. It actually looks pretty neat. It uses, their Clix technology, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Next up is Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small. This is something that we had mentioned before when it was previewed at Nuremberg, although we didn't have the actual English translation of the name.
Well, at the point, I basically just went on and I just translated it, and it was something to the extent of For the Love of Animals, yeah, or something like that.
So we have an actual official title now. Again, though, this is sort of Agricola Light. It's meant for 2 players, and it looks like it should be playable in not an evening. So that's a bit of an improvement over the entire evening length of Agricola. Well, depending on who you're playing with, I suppose. In addition, and this is actually very, very recent news, this happened yesterday.
Well, yesterday from our perspective, time travelers.
Well, yes, this will be a few days back for everyone else, but I'm guessing a lot of you have already heard about this anyway, but Steve Jackson Games, one of their first games was Ogre, and it's actually the first game that Steve Jackson designed. and it is well, it's essentially a tactical combat game against these cybernetic tanks called ogres. Um, anyway, it's got a really big following. They've already published up to, I think it's fifth edition, and the new one coming out is sixth edition. So instead of just doing a really small print run for the big fans, Steve Jackson decided to put it up on Kickstarter so that you could kind of gauge interest. And well, there's a lot of reasons why somebody would put it on Kickstarter anyway, so I'm not going to go over all that. But anyway, he posted it up. He posted it just on a few forums. He didn't even post it on the main Steve Jackson Games website, and within 2 hours, they met their $20,000 goal. And right now, I'm just looking at their page now, and it's been up for about a day, and they're almost at 100,000. So that says something. A lot of people.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of Kickstarter right there.
Yeah. So obviously, a lot of people like this game, and you should go check it out if you're at all interested in it. It's kind of a hefty price tag. The basic incentive level you need to pay to get the actual game is $100, but the box for this, like it's shown, it's massive. It's 14 pounds of stuff. In fact, right now, as of right now, they aren't even shipping the game outside of the United States because it is too expensive to ship due to the weight.
Oh man, that box really is an ogre.
Well done. But anyway, I'm sure that if you have some friends in the States, you can probably convince them to buy it for you or the like, or maybe some enterprising person in the States might buy up a few of them and ship them to us less fortunate people who do not live in the United States and cannot currently acquire it. But anyway, it looks like a really epic game, and because they're getting so much money, I think they're going to be doing a lot of improvements on what they had thought, so it's going to be pretty cool. Check it out. Next up, there was actually just a post about this on Board Game Geek, but Cryptozoic, who they publish a lot of board games. A lot of them are kind of the mainstream type stuff, but a lot of them are designer too. They have announced a few things they're going to be publishing. For starters, they're going to be publishing about 1 million Hobbit card games apparently when that movie comes out. Well, actually, I think it's more like 8 or something ridiculous like that. There's at least 3 deck building games in there. There's an expandable trading card game, whatever that means. A couple of board games. It's pretty ridiculous for what is essentially a single movie. I think they might be flooding their own market, but whatever.
The Tolkien market, of course, is very, very, very valuable. I mean, they're going to be printing off these 8 different games, but they're pretty much printing off gold as far as I'm concerned. People buy things. If they see The Lord of the Rings, if they see The Hobbit, anything like that, people buy it. One of the things is, though, since this is all coming out from the same distributor, though, or the same publisher, right? Cryptozoic. Yep. It almost kind of seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot by putting out so many games. Like, I don't know if they're going to be compatible. Like, say the deck building games. I don't know if those are going to be compatible with each other or not. But it seems a little weird. It seems like they're oversaturating their own market against themselves, and I don't know. I hope they do well, and I hope that they are very successful with it. But I don't know. It seems like a dangerous game. They also have quite a few other deck building games and other various games that they're putting out fairly soon as well. Was just reading something a little earlier about a Capcom-based deck building game that they're putting out. And this seems to be somewhere along the lines of their fighting games, so games like Street Fighter, Final Fight, Darkstalkers, among others as well. And this kind of looks neat. It's sort of like the whole like Capcom versus SNK kind of video game style, but in a deck building game instead of just a video game format. So this is neat. I'm kind of interested to see what they'll do with this. When I saw a bunch of these, though, I had to sort of do a double take. I wasn't sure because there were so many deck building games coming out of here, and I couldn't remember if Cryptozoic was the same people that did that Star Trek deck building game that I purchased and wasn't a big fan of not long ago. And fortunately, they are not. Cryptozoic actually does a lot of other cool stuff. What else is Cryptozoic putting out there? Oh yeah, they're putting out a WoW deck building game. Jason, I think you know a little bit more about that than I do at this point.
Well, a little bit. There hasn't been a whole lot of information actually posted about that one yet.
Mm-hmm.
All they've really released is that essentially each person is going to, be an individual hero, and the cards that you're going to be buying are, individual powers and abilities to, make your hero more powerful, I guess. But yeah, they haven't
Right.
really released much beyond a list of the components. Um, well, actually, that's pretty much it. They haven't rules. They haven't released any pictures, so nobody's really sure where they're at with it. They were actually supposed to be releasing it this month,
Oh,
but
okay.
they recently announced that it was going to be pushed back. So I don't know what's going on there. I guess they have to deal with about a bazillion Hobbit cards first. So,
They've got too many Hobbit expansions
yeah.
coming out or Hobbit games coming out. So
That's probably taking up a lot of their time. Aside from that, though, and actually, I had mentioned this the last episode, but the first episode of Will Wheaton's Table Talk is actually up. For those of you who have not seen it, I would recommend you do so. It's actually pretty neat. They look at Small World for the first episode. They go over the rules very basically, and they actually have three relatively big celebrities of the nerd culture there. They have Grant Imahara from MythBusters. Um, they have one of the largest broadcasters, who deals with StarCraft 2 and all of that stuff. And they have a pretty big blogger on there. Their names entirely elude me right now. It's actually a really neat show. They have very good production values. It looks like they're actually playing on the Sultan table from Geek Chic. So they're
oh, good
yeah. Well,
lord.
no, it's pretty apparent a lot of money has gone into this production, and it shows. Their production values are a little bit better than ours, but
just a smidgen.
yeah,
like,
maybe someday when one of us stars on a big sci-fi epic series, we might be able to do that too. Something to look forward to.
Here's hoping. That's my life goal personally. And the last thing we're going to bring up in the just general board gaming news here is there is a Farmarama board game coming up. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this, Farmarama is I believe, a Facebook game, but essentially it's a browser game, and it's a farming-based game. You play farming, the browser game, and I mean, we kind of have this already. We have Agricola. But interestingly enough, this Farmarama game is actually going to be done by Mr. Rosenberg himself, the man who made Agricola. I'm interested to see how this comes down. I don't really want to get it, but something tells me because it has Mr. Rosenberg's name on it, I probably will end up having it on my shelf.
It's not like you're his biggest fan or anything, Ken.
Well, I might not be his biggest fan. I mean, I don't have all his expansions. I mean, there's like a promo one that I still haven't picked up
Yeah,
yet.
it's
and I don't have anything signed
well, no,
by
it's
him.
entirely not like
That's
you have a
unfortunate.
shrine to him in your bedroom or anything.
What? No, you weren't...
He is so dreamy, though. I mean.
Well, have you ever seen his eyes? Oh, those eyes. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Thank you for making... First off, if there was going to be a Farmarama board game, I'm glad it was you, Mr. Rosenberg, because, quite frankly, you're the one that's going to be able to make that a good game. I haven't played the browser game, so I really can't speak anything of what to expect in this game. I assume we're going to see an Agricola-type game.
I'm going to guess there's farming involved
There-
somehow.
You might have to grow vegetables, possibly take care of animals. Improvements for your farm may come about, and there may be some worker placement mechanics and such. But yeah, anyway, so we'll see how this goes down. Okay, well, that's all we have to say for board game news. So, is there anything else you're excited for in the this upcoming little while there, Jason? Is there anything that stands out for you that you'd like to share with
Well,
us?
I mean, I'm also kind of into video games, and there's a couple coming out. Well, there's one coming out very soon that I'm very excited about. Because, well, it's Diablo 3.
Well, you and the rest of the world, buddy.
I have actually taken off 2 days from work just to play that.
Well, at least you're not calling in sick on those days.
Well, that's true, and my boss is usually pretty cool about asking for days off for game-related things. I work in an electronics department, so obviously all of us kind of like games a little bit. But aside from that, there's another one that doesn't even have a street date yet, but has me all tickled pink inside. And that is The Witness by Jonathan Blow. And for those of you who are not aware, well, shame on you. And he's the one who actually created Braid, which is a PC game that was actually also ported to a number of consoles. And if you haven't heard of Braid, my God, where have you been hiding? It is like it's a masterpiece. It is it's art as a computer game.
I have to say, it took me a long time to actually play Braid. I'd heard about it, and I heard it was like a time manipulation puzzle platformer sort of game, and I was like, okay, well that sounds pretty cool and everything. And then I actually played it, and I was just reading the little snippets of story that you get all throughout the game, and you're just like, oh my god, this game is so deep and intense. There's I think one of my favorite parts is I believe it's the fourth world. It's like the last world, I believe, but it's the one with the ring.
I don't think that's the last one, but it's pretty close.
Second
Something
last
like
then?
that. They're about.
Yeah. Anyway, so the one with the ring there, just all the stuff going on about the ring, and it's just how the ring is this relationship for a metaphor, but at the same time it's metaphor for a relationship. I apologize as well for any further silliness that you might hear from me listeners, but I'm kind of shaking off some backshift in the last little bit there. Anyway, so the ring is a metaphor for relationships. Got it. And everything that goes on about it. And then, of course, there's the ending. And for those who have not played Braid yet, which, I mean, for all of you that might have not, which, I mean, it's an indie game, so it's fairly easy to overlook it, I suppose. But it's a masterpiece, it really is. But the ending is just so wonderful and beautiful, but terrifying. And there's this alternate ending if you actually find all these secret pieces and stuff. This game just... It seeped into me for I played it for a week straight. It just seeped into my brain. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't go away from it. I had to just consume it. I didn't play it. I consumed it.
And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, why are you going all artsy-fartsy about this? But, I mean, really, it's something you're not going to understand unless you have played it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. But it's I don't know, Jonathan Blow, he managed to take, something as innocuous as a video game, and it's, he changed it into something different. It's very different from any game you're going to play. I mean, one of the main things, and one of the things he's said about a lot of the game projects that he's, thinking up now and everything, wants to actually respect the player playing the game, and he wants to respect their time. So instead of a lot of the games that are coming out these days where, your hand is held through the entire game, where they basically show you exactly what to do before you have to do it, and, stuff like that. He doesn't... There's actually no direction at all in Braid. There are no instructions beyond the basic controls, how to move and how to jump. Everything else, you have to figure out for yourself. And, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, that sounds like a stupid game. How am I going to figure all this stuff out? But it's presented in such a way that you really can. And, I think that's really masterful. And anyway, this new game coming out, The Witness, it's kind of along the same lines. Essentially, you sort of wake up on this island where there are all these, puzzles just strewn around. There's no explanation for it. And you're just kind of left to yourself, and to do these in whatever order you deem fit. And there's little tidbits about what's going on, I guess. But how you actually explore the island and how the order you find these things in actually apparently has an effect on how you perceive the story, and that sounds really cool to me.
One of the things that sort of speaks to me with these games is it's kind of like the Portal series, where Portal sort of it's a puzzle game, obviously. I mean, you might not have heard of Braid, and I'll excuse that, but you've heard of Portal before. There's no excuse for this. You've played it, you've beaten it, you love it. There's no reason not to at this point have played it, beaten it, and loved it. I'm watching you, listeners. Anyway, so with Portal, like they hold your hand for the first little while, but then eventually you really have to start thinking outside the box, still within a box basically, but you still have to think and use these sort of things in a way that is logical, but not necessarily obvious, basically. And you just feel like a freaking genius every single time you get one of these puzzles. You're like, I'm the king of the world! I figured this out! Woohoo! And it's pretty freaking amazing. Braid is definitely one of those games. I'm really looking forward to this Witness game. If it's even half as wonderful as Braid was, I'll be all up on it the day it releases. I'm not going to let that slip by me. So for those who have listened to our previous episodes, you may have heard us talking about the upcoming Thunderstone Advance, which actually dropped a little while ago there. I think we were still on our little hiatus when it actually dropped. But I was considering picking it up, and I was hemming and hawing, and eventually I did pick it up, though. And I have to say, if you like Thunderstone, this is a really good buy. It's very good. If you haven't played Thunderstone before, this is going to be where you're going to want to introduce yourself on it. This game basically fixes... I mean, we've talked about this before. There's issues we have with Thunderstone, we've always had with Thunderstone, and they were minor things, really, but they just together created this big issue. But this game really actually solves a lot of our major issues. Like, the monsters are done up in levels now, so you have like different ranks of monsters, and you can create the dungeon deck. You can still shuffle them up randomly as like the previous game, if that's how you like to throw it down. But you can actually make it so that the dungeon is accessible in a, like, you encounter lower level monsters first, and then like higher level monsters, and then like the big guys and the boss, basically. That's another thing too. Thunderstone, there's no Thunderstone anymore. You have to fight the boss of the dungeon, basically, to complete the game, which I think is a nice and very welcome addition. They also, Light is directly on the board now, which is good. There is a board, I should say, as well, but there's been a board since Dragonspire. I mean, if you picked up the Dragonspire box, it's there's that little board. But this is like a whole board. It tells you where everything goes, shows you like the maximum amount of things you can actually have of any type of item or spell or whatever. And yeah, overall I'm really happy with it. However, this also means that I have about 14 or 20 pounds of Thunderstone on my shelf now, and oh my god, I still have more expansions to pick up too, and it just goes on forever. It's like I know. It's like I'm staring into this void, and the void is staring back at me, and that void is Thunderstone. And yet, this game has definitely renewed my interest in this game. This set has renewed my interest in the game. I've really enjoyed playing it lately. So, again, if you like Thunderstone and haven't played it for a while, pick up Thunderstone Advance, and you'll play it for a good little while. It's worth the investment. There's no doubt about that. Well, we should probably get back on task a little bit, so we'll talk about the topic for the day. And again, the topic we're going to talk about today is gaming organization. How the heck do you keep everything in that box, and how do you actually take it out and put it all back together again so it's easily accessible? My god, this is quite a task sometimes. Jason, you're the one that got me into this originally, so do you want to start?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it really comes down to, like, a lot of these designer games, they have a few more components than, your traditional monopolies. Especially when you're talking about things like Fantasy Flight games like Arkham Horror, where there's about a bazillion different, decks and all of this other stuff. I mean, when you were setting up, like, Monopoly when you were a kid, it was pretty easy. There's 2 decks of cards, there's, the actual deeds, and the little player bits. Beyond that, it's just, the money and stuff like that. So really, there's not a big deal if it's all kind of mixed together, because everything's different. As opposed to Arkham Horror, where there's about 6 or 7 decks that are the same size, and then there's another, like, 15 decks that are a different size, but all the same size, amongst themselves. So you really need to start organizing these games if for one thing, if you want to actually keep them in good condition, because just letting that stuff fly all over the place is not good for the components.
Not to mention the fact that it makes it impossible to actually set the damn game up whenever you actually go into the box.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. It makes it a lot harder to actually set things up if you actually have to sort all this stuff out from the get-go. So we're just going to go over, how you should deal with this situation, basically. How we've dealt with it anyway. There are numerous different ways, and it's one of those things where you kind of have to find your own way. But there's a couple of basic methods that most people use, and that we're just going to go over here for those of you who may not know. So first of all, this is kind of the important thing for me. When you get a new game, that is when you should start your organization. You shouldn't, take it out to play with it, throw everything in the box, and then, go back and organize it later on. It's a lot easier if you do it right from the start. Now, sometimes that's not really all that feasible, depending on when you're opening it. Like, if you get a new game at a convention and you absolutely have to play it right then, I can certainly understand that sentiment. But, at the same time, there's no reason why you can't bring baggies to conventions.
Well, I mean, you might not have known you were going to pick it up, though. I mean, you could have like a board game unboxing kit like on here at all times, like you and me. But I mean, most mortals are not set up for such a thing.
But I guess the key point here is when you are actually unboxing a game, you should separate everything from the get-go. So this means separate out the different kinds of counters as you're punching them out. Separate the miniatures into their different groups. This is one of those things where you have to kind of do it logically. Obviously, you're not going to separate each individual thing. You're going to sort of group them together. So, for example, if you have a game with a lot of tokens, and, there's a lot of things like where there's like one token for... Well, let's use Arkham Horror as an example. There's going to be, the Terror Track token. That's not going to get its own bag. There's going to be a few miscellaneous tokens that you're going to lump all together. Then on the other hand, there's going to be the monster tokens where you're going to, put all of those together. So, you have to make a logical division amongst these things so that, you kind of have them separated out into relatively, a small number of groups. And for this, you're going to have probably a lot of bags at the ready. That is kind of typically the thing that's used to organize these things is, Ziploc bags. So you should have plenty of those in different sizes if you can get them. The other option is plano boxes, and a lot of people really love these. It's, the little boxes that are meant for like tools and screws and nuts and bolts and that stuff that have sort of the movable compartments, so you can change the size of them however you need them.
Yeah, I've actually, I think Chris and Kate got me into starting to use those, and I have just gone nuts with them since then. They organized Agricola by having them in one of those like plano boxes, and I was like, that's the best idea ever! And I went nuts, and basically all of my games I have like a significant portion of pieces, or they're always in those little freaking boxes.
Well, I mean, there are certainly some advantages to that, especially in that you can kind of use those while you're playing. You can just take the little box set, set it on the table, and then everything's already separated. You don't have to put it out in little piles like you do with bags. I personally don't use that, but that's more because it takes a little bit more setup. And I really do like to get my games out of the box and, all set up quickly. That's not to say that I wouldn't use that method in the future, but, it's a personal preference thing, whatever you're most comfortable with. Really, heck, if you want to just throw all your crap in the box, go too. I mean, it's your game. You're the one who...
It's true, but then this topic probably didn't interest you anyway, though, so you're probably not listening to us.
There are a few other things, too. Like, a lot of people like sleeving all of their cards. And, that is a good way to protect the cards, but at the same time, it's kind of cost and time prohibitive. Sleeves cost something like $5 for 50.
It depends on the kind of sleeves you go with. The Fantasy Flight Games sleeves, they are $4 if you get them in like a typical like friendly gaming store. They're about $4 for a pack of 50, but that adds up like really
and this is
quickly.
What I'm saying. It's like in some games it's not that big a deal, but if you're gonna go sleeve, say, Dominion or Thunderstone, which has about like 500 cards each. You're looking at 10 packs at $4 a pop. That's like almost as much as the game itself.
You could buy an expansion for that.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention the fact that do you know how long it takes to sleeve 500 cards, it takes a while.
Hey man, I got a system. I think this is actually one of those topics that we kind of disagree on, because I personally am in favor of sleeves. I definitely don't sleeve all of my games, but I'm in favor of sleeves. But back in the day, when I was still in my Magic the Gathering phase, when I didn't understand that there was any other games other than that in the universe, like so many of us did, I used card sleeves all the time. Now, one of the main reasons why I use the card sleeves, though, is for organizational purposes. Like, I didn't just have, like go out and buy, like, a couple thousand black card sleeves and then sleeve everything up in the, typical black or red card sleeves. I actually had a different colored set of card sleeves for basically every single one of my decks. And on one hand, one might look at that and be like, are you crazy? Like, that's ridiculous. Or do you have to, like color code your deck? Like, do you color code the table that you're playing on too? Like, but this makes it really easy. If I just chuck them all in a card box, I can basically say, okay, I'm taking all the white cards out. Bam, here's this deck that is all white sleeves.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was exactly the same way. I used to, color code my CCG decks.
Oh, that's right. I remember when we used to play the Lord of the Rings card game. You had crazy amounts of card sleeves too.
Yeah, I still have a ridiculous amount. The issue comes from the fact, for me, that I would like to have all of my games sleeved, like all the cards, but it really comes down to cost. Even if I use all of the sleeves that I currently have, I would not be able to sleeve every single card in every single game. Not to mention the fact that some of them are different sizes. Get specialty sleeves for them, and it really comes down to the fact that, like, if I'm the kind of person that if I sleeved one or two games, I'd have to do all of them. I couldn't just leave it at one or two games, because then it's kind of like, if you have 5 kids, are you going to just give one a college education?
Because sleeving costs just as much as a college education.
Well, when you're talking about my
actually,
game
that's probably
collection,
not too far off.
When you're talking about my game collection,
you probably would have to take out a student sleeving loan and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's not cheap. It also depends on the game, though, too. So with the games I have, one of the ones I want to sleeve right now is actually Mansions of Madness. I want to sleeve that game because there's not a whole lot of cards in there, but the cards that are there do see a lot of movement, generally speaking. You get a lot of the whatchamacallit, the exploration cards, like all the cards that are on the exploration sort of thing. Sometimes people have trouble like picking them up, and then they end up bending them or whatever to try to pick them up, or like they get the little like fingernail scratches on the side of them and stuff. And there's not a whole lot of these, so it's not really too much of an effort for me to card those all up. And then, of course, I wouldn't want to sleeve every single card in that box either. There's things like the attack cards, which don't see as much play as everything else. I mean, obviously, they see play, but not so much as, say, like the exploration cards, which are, like, picked up and fondled all the time. There's other games like... This is one thing that actually related, but sort of tangenting away here a little bit. Dominion versus Thunderstone. Dominion uses the Euro-style size of cards. Thunderstone uses the CCG, TCG, American standard size of cards. So Thunderstone you can sleeve in like the standard like run-of-the-mill card sleeves. Dominion, you have to go out and get those Euro-style size sleeves. And as far as I'm aware, I know there's other places you can get them through, but Fantasy Flight is the only one that seems to be readily accessible on these ones. That said, though, pretty much all of Fantasy Flight's games are like the Euro-sized. At least I think that's the distinction between the two. I assume that the taller, like thinner ones are the Euro-sized one, and the somewhat shorter, fatter ones are the American-style cards. At any rate, I had to go and get the yellow series and the green series versions of the Fantasy Flight sleeves. Also talking about Fantasy Flight sleeves, one thing I do have to commend Fantasy Flight for is them making up that system where you can see how many sleeves you need based on the number and the color on the back of their box. Kudos on them for that, because that's actually very useful. You can look at that and say, oh, wow, I need 3 packs of this and 4 packs of this. So if you are really big into sleeving, You pick up any Fantasy Flight game, you flip it over, and you say, I need this many of this and this many of this. Give them to me. As far as just general sleeving goes, I definitely won't be sleeving all of my games, but there's just some games that see a little bit more use than others. I do eventually want to sleeve Dominion, but that is a heck of a task considering I have all the expansions for it, so I'd probably be spending about a good $100 on sleeves, if not more, trying to get that all done up and everything.
Aside from the sleeving issue anyway, and, again, this is something that it really comes down to personal preference and financial stability, I suppose.
Well, this is true.
But one thing I will tell you not to do is avoid elastics.
Ooh, yeah.
This is something I used to do for a lot of my older games, and let me tell you, when elastics are stored, they don't really weather too well. Like, I've actually pulled out, older games that I've had sitting around for a few years, and, the elastics actually kind of become gummy, and they'll stick right to the cards and leave a residue. This is not something you want. So I would really highly recommend staying away from elastics entirely.
Another thing I always find with elastics, too, depending on the stack of cards that you're using and the size of the elastics and the tension of the elastic, you can actually just straight up warp your cards.
Yeah.
And, I mean, kudos for keeping yourself organized, but bad form for destroying your cards, as opposed to just sticking them in a little baggie and then kind of being done with it.
So next up is how to keep these things organized. So, these are just a few tips and tricks that we've kind of come up with along the way. And again, you're probably going to evolve your own system. But for starters, when you're using the baggies, you should mark the bag contents on each bag. Even if it's just, a very brief point form list of what's in there, everything that goes into the bag initially should be marked on the bag. And that's mainly, it's not really for you, because you're probably going to know how your organization system goes, but it's mainly for when others are helping you put away the games, which, I'm kind of hoping they do. But, then they can look at the bag, they can see, okay, this is what goes in here. And, it makes it a lot easier for them. You should also let others know how you like your things to be put away, because, otherwise they may not even see the markings on the bag. I've had it happen that people just kind of start grabbing handfuls of components and stuffing them into bags, as they would if they were picking up, beer cans off the floor and throwing them into a blue bag. And if you're like me, that's not something you want to see happen to your games. So, you should probably be upfront with people from the get-go. And another thing, too, it's probably going to happen to you quite a bit. I know it happens to me every time I put away a game, there's always that one piece that you just can't see because it blends in with the background of the board or whatever, and it kind of gets left out of the bag it's supposed to go in. Don't just throw that back in the box. Just, just pull the bag out, open it up, put the piece in. It's going to be a lot easier later on because, the piece might get lost. And if you just leave it out of the box, well, that's really a bad idea. Then you're probably going to lose it for all time.
Well, that's actually something that we have in the house here. We have this little bowl of random bits from games that just sort of got left behind, and that's from all the board gaming events we've had here before, the charity marathon that we do in the fall. There's always some bits just sort of lying around. Actually, I have some bits I should probably be returning to you, Jason. While we're on this subject, anyway.
And I probably have some of yours. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
That's kind of the way it goes, and I mean that does kind of happen on its own. But there are a lot of things you can do to avoid this. So if you see that piece that is still sitting on the table after everything's been put away, you know what? Crack open the box. It's only going to take a few seconds, and you're not going to be missing a component for all time.
What I have basically is I have a shoebox now that just has all of my bagging and organizational supplies in it. And it's if I want to go to a game, I just go to it, pull it open, pull it what I need, and bam, here it is. As opposed to having it strewn all about the house, because that's what used to happen.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, no, there's certain tools you're going to want to have on hand for when you're cracking open your games for the first time, or if you were previously one of those people who just threw it all back in and you want to make amends and atone for your past sins. These are the kind of things you were going to want to get. First of all, like I said before, baggies, all kinds of baggies. You're going to want all kinds of different sizes. You're going to want little tiny ones. You're going to want like really huge ones. My recommendation is to go out and just buy at least a small, a medium, and a large size Ziploc bag. One of those boxes you can get of them. They're usually pretty cheap. You're not going to spend more than like $20 or so for the 3 of them. So it's not going to cost you a whole lot. So just do it. That's the main thing you want for this process.
The place that I usually go to, there's 2 places really. There's a dollar store near my house. For those who are in the Halifax, and I don't know how far this has gone, but the Dollarama. The Dollarama has these little craft bags, and they have one craft bag that's basically like 1.5 inches wide by about 2.5 inches tall. And this is perfect. Like if you have the really small Euro-sized cards, like the ones that are like, for anyone familiar with Ticket to Ride, they're like the little tiny cards in Ticket to Ride, or like say in Arkham Horror, they're like the investigator items and stuff, like the little cards like that. They're the perfect size for putting just like a couple of those in, and sometimes you can, depending on how many you put in, you can just close them, sometimes not. But anyway, so the dollar store, they've got that size of bag. They've got like the next size up, which is sort of like 3 inches wide by about 3.5 inches tall, essentially. That's another good size bag there. And then, of course, they got like a big one that's just like, throw whatever you want in it. This is going to fit whatever you want. Another thing not to underestimate is just straight up getting Ziploc bags. Again, if you have a dollar store near your place, or like some sort of like a cheapy market kind of thing, you can get Ziploc bags very easily. You can get very many different sizes of them. And failing both of these things, if you don't have like a store, like a cheapy store nearby, try Walmart. Walmart will definitely have like craft bags, like for holding beads and stuff. You can usually get various bags, basically. Like sometimes you get a collection for like $5. You'll get like 10 of like 3 different sizes of bags. Or a craft store. There we go. There must be at least a craft store nearby. But there's various places you can get these bags, and they're very, very useful. This is like the key for organizing your games.
Yeah, and as I said, you're going to want probably at least 3 sizes here. The small ones are going to be for like just the miscellaneous bits and the really tiny stuff. Medium is going to be for tokens and stuff like that. Maybe even some miniatures. And the big ones are usually going to be for things like hex tiles. For large groups of miniatures, stuff like that. But it's really important to have large groups. Well, a fair number of these bags is kind of a good thing. And it's one of those things where if you buy a bunch of boxes, it's probably going to last you for quite a few games. Another tip too, and a lot of you probably already figured this one out, but in case you haven't, most of these sealable plastic bags, they're kind of made for food, which is why they have an airtight seal, and that's why you kind of have to burp them beforehand, unless you want that huge air pocket in there. However, because you're packaging game components here, and those are presumably not going to go stale, one thing that you can do is you can actually just take a thumbtack, make a very tiny hole in the side of the bag, and then when you close it, you can actually kind of press the air out without having to try and sort of open the bag up a little bit and press the air out and then reseal it so that there's no air in there, which is kind of hard. So just make a little tiny pinhole. It's going to make things a lot easier.
That's super clever. I've never even thought about that before.
Yeah, well, it's actually something I picked up on one of the BGG forums at one point. So
nice. Kudos to whoever thought of that, because that's actually a really good idea.
Yep. Actually, there's a lot of really neat ideas there. There was also one guy who came up with the idea of those little plastic sort of suction cup darts that you can get for guns and things. Keep one of those with your plano boxes when you're using like the cardboard counters, and then whenever you need to take one of the counters out, you suction cup.
That's so clever. I have to go out and buy a little plastic gun. I'll be back, Jason.
You see, there's all kinds of like these clever ideas for people who are interested in organizing games on Board Game Geek, so you should check them out. If you have,
My God, that would make accessing those Plano boxes so much easier. Oh dear God.
so now I've just caused Kenny to spend probably a lot more money.
Yes, I will buy hundreds of dollars of plastic guns just for their sweet, delicious orange darts.
Anyway, moving on from baggies though. Well, as we were kind of alluding to right there, the plastic Plano boxes. Again, this is something people tend to use either in place of or alongside baggies. Um, you can usually get them at like the dollar store or like a home improvement type place. They're usually not very expensive. They're like a couple of bucks. And again, they come with all of these plastic dividers that you can kind of configure, so you can make them whatever size you need them to be. Um, and so it's really convenient for things like tokens, because if you have like a pile of life tokens that goes in one compartment, your pile of sanity tokens goes in another compartment. You basically compartmentalize it, and again, when you're actually setting the game up, instead of opening up all the baggies and putting little piles of things all over the place, you can basically just take that out, set it down, open up the lid, and there you go. And any kind of token you need is right there.
I know that I implemented the Plano box in my Arkham Horror set, and I believe that was actually on screen when we actually did our Arkham Horror video. So I think that like anybody who's watched the video has probably seen this box already. But essentially, that box mostly has investigator stuff in it. So usually what ends up happening is that when I set up the game, usually I have to do all the Great Old One stuff because most other people don't really want to be bothered with it. But regardless, when you're setting up the game, instead of saying like, oh, okay, I need this much sanity, or I need this much health, or I need this many monies, you just basically pass this little box around and say, here, set up your character. Take what you need. Take the little skill sliders, take your money, take your sanity, take what you need, pass it on to the next person. Nice and simple. You don't have to get lost trying to figure out where all these bags are and such, because everything is right there. I hate playing games like that now without having those little Plano boxes, because it's just so much more choresome.
Well, yeah, I still remember when we first started playing Arkham Horror, and it was kind of like the setup period was almost like the trading floor on Wall Street, because you'd have one person assigned to each type of token. So there'd be the sanity guy, and there'd be the stamina guy, and then everyone would be yelling at different people at different times. Give me 2 stamina. I need 2 stamina. No, 3 sanity over here. I need 3 sanity.
I need change for brains over here.
It was just so ridiculous that it sounded ridiculous. I'm sure we looked ridiculous, and it took a lot longer than it should have. When this kind of system is available. So for games like that, it makes it so much easier. And I could certainly see myself doing that at some point in the future if I ever get around to it.
Again, Jason, you really have to do this with your Arkham Horror box. You will be a better person for it.
Next up on the list of tools is card boxes. Now, these come in kind of many different forms. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with a lot of these, being hobbyists yourselves, I'm assuming. For one thing, there's the deck boxes that you can get from Ultra Pro, and these are more meant for CCG cards, but they can also be used to house different decks of cards. And I'm told by Ken that he started using them actually for a lot of his board games.
Yes. So, gentle listeners, check this out. Get yourself 4 of the standard plastic Ultra Pro deck boxes. These will be the ones that have like the plastic flip lip on the top there. They're usually kind of stiff on top. It's kind of hard to keep them open and all that jazz. But you only need them open to pull stuff out and put them back in. If you take 4 of these card boxes, you can fit them snugly inside of like any of your standard size square Fantasy Flight type boxes, or the Dominion sort of size boxes. That's square. You know what I'm talking about. If you know the box I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'm sorry and I apologize. But you can fit 4 of those snugly into one of these boxes. They don't move at all. Like, I shook the box, they sit just perfect. So I recently got into the living card game, the Call of Cthulhu living card game. And I had all these cards kind of floating around, and there's all these different factions and such. So I recently discovered it when I was trying to get into this. And you can fit a total of 8 of these boxes very easily into this standard size square box. I don't know. We should start naming these box sizes. That's the next episode we should do. We should do the card box size, or the gaming box sizes thing. That
I know that's something you feel very strongly about.
So much anger about that.
I hear you.
Anyway, but this square box, though, it can fit 8 of these card boxes entirely, very nicely, and you can still fit board, rules, and little bits and stuff all on top of there, too. I was super proud of finding this out. If you already knew this, that's fantastic. If you didn't, you are welcome. You can take that. You don't even have to give me any money for it.
Aside from those kind of deck boxes, though, there's also the standard sort of the TCG sort of collection holding boxes, the little white ones that you can get in the various lengths. And those are also good for storing cards from games that have a ton of cards, basically. I know that for my Android board game, like all of the cards from that are in one of these. I think it's one of the 500 counts card boxes, and they fit pretty much perfectly in there. So that's another option. The only caveat there is that they tend not to fit back into the actual game box.
Which is a huge downside on.
Yeah, but it's one of those kind of balancing things. Like I know that I could have probably fit it all in baggies or something, but then you have about a bazillion baggies for that game. So I think this is probably a little bit easier, and I know myself that they're in these deck boxes, and I need these boxes to play. So
I know personally with me, what I've done with, because again, as I've said 100,000 times, I have all of Dominion, and eventually I figured out that if I want to play Dominion, I have to take the base set out and then use whatever set I want to use at that point in time. Maybe it would be the base set, usually it's some other set. So what I eventually did is I just took all the basic cards out, so you got your treasure, your victory cards, and curses and all that stuff, put them in a separate box, took all of the card randomizers out of every single set that I have, took them, put them all into plastic sleeves, and for this I actually used the American standard size, not the Euro standard size, and they don't fit properly. I will note that they do not fit properly, but for all intents and purposes I was doing this for the sake of seeing Hinterlands is green, Intrigue is blue, or whatever, Seaside is blue rather, and just using this so I can look at a glance and say, okay, I'm going to take all the green cards out because I'm playing Hinterlands right now and I want the Hinterlands randomizers. So anyway, this box is just full of these different sets of cards. And in order to play Dominion, rather than having to take the base set with me everywhere I go, and in addition to whatever expansions I want to play, I can just bring the sets I want to play and this box. Nice and perfect. Which, apparently Rio Grande agrees with me, because they're actually putting out that Dominion Basics box. Do you remember we were talking about that a while ago, Jason? So someone at Rio Grande agrees with me that sometimes you just want to have those base cards on the side and then go on. Oh god, I'll probably end up buying that too.
Yes, you will.
Son of a...
Anyway, getting away from card boxes, the last tool we want to talk about, and this is less organization for when you're storing the game, but more for when you're playing the game, and this is dishes. Now we're not talking about bowls of soup or anything like that. But you can usually find there are these little plastic bowls or cups. They come in various sizes. You can usually get a ton of them for $1 at the dollar store. And these are great for when you have a bunch of little tokens that you want to keep all together. We kind of started doing this a couple of years back, and I know Ken has quite a collection of them at his place now, and we use them pretty extensively. It's for things like if you want to separate out Agricola and you don't have the Plano box, you can have one of these little dishes for each of the types of cubes or resources or whatever. At the Gates of Loyang is another thing we've used this for all the different vegetables. It's a good thing to have on hand.
I personally find I'm of two minds with this. For some games, I actually have a couple of these little dishes actually in the box. So a game that we haven't actually done yet that is on our queue for this time around is one called Furstenfeld. And there's just a couple little resources that need to be taken out and such, but it's just so much easier to have them in a little dish because the space that they have there, I have like the perfect size dish for these little things. The space that they have on the board is like, it fits this little dish, you put all the little tokens in it, and voila. There's some games you actually will want to just include those little dishes in it for every single time because you know you're going to need it every freaking time. There's some games, though, where you may not necessarily know if you're going to need them or not, depending on what actually comes out. Or what's needed in the particular play. I mean, there's sometimes you have like games where you use certain tokens one time, other tokens another time. So you may just even want to just have a reserve of them on hand, like say like 5 or 10. We used cups for a little while. Jason, do you remember when we used to use like just like the plastic like solo cups?
I do, yes.
Yeah, that I didn't mind that, but I found that at a glance, like you can't really see into them. Like you have to kind of pick them up and look into them to know what's there. Whereas like these nice plastic little serving cups, you can see them. They're sitting on the table, nice and easy, but they're generally smaller and may not necessarily hold everything in.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things where they're kind of suited to different situations. Like
true.
There are certain situations where you want to hold either a large quantity of things or where you don't want to be able to see what's in the cup, like the plastic solo cups. So I'm assuming everyone kind of knows what we're talking about here. They're the sort of red plastic or colored plastic beer cup type things.
Yeah, like you'd usually like use them once and throw them out, or you'd like write your name on them at a party or something.
So that's what we're talking about, and these are great for things where you have either a large number of the same type of token, or where you want something that's opaque. So, for example, the Monster Cup for Arkham Horror, that it makes an ideal Monster Cup because you can't see what's in it, and presumably you're probably only going to have one or two of these around, so it's not going to be too confusing. Again, it's one of those things where you have to kind of play with it yourself, and you have to figure out what works for you. You might find some other types of things that work even better. And that's the great thing. There's always posts on Board Game Geek of people basically just saying, "Hey guys, I found this really awesome thing in a home improvement store, and it just revolutionized the way that I organize my board games. So check it out."
Well, for me, I think the biggest revelations I ever had, Plan on Box has to be number one. There's no doubt about that. Although the Ziploc bags, I don't know. I guess that should be considered a revolution, but I mean, most of the games kind of come with them anyway.
A lot of them do now, yeah.
I guess it's a little less so. Yeah, which is nice. Like, there's games that it's like, I'm so glad you included these bags because I needed them. Agricola was one of those games, wasn't it? It actually had the
it was mostly a lot of the Euro style that started that, but now I find a lot of the other companies are doing it too. I've noticed that. Fantasy Flight, they aren't really including. They're not including, the quantity of bags that most of these other things do. But I've noticed that a lot of the.
I'm not sure if you've seen any Fantasy Flight games recently, but me and Chapel keep joking around about this. They actually have a Ziploc bag form-sized for your freaking rule book. So the rule book always comes in a Ziploc bag now. I don't know if this was an issue. Like, people were like, why isn't the rulebook more secure? We need to make sure that the rulebook doesn't get crap on it in between turns, so we have to have it in this hermetically sealed bag.
Yeah, that might be going a little bit overboard, and I've also noticed that in a few games I've bought of theirs, the actual, I'm assuming a lot of you have purchased board games, presumably at some point. Yeah,
hopefully one or two by now.
And that typically, you open up the box, sometimes the board is on top, but usually either right below that or right on top of that is the stack of counter sheets that you can punch out. And in a few of the Fantasy Flight games that I've gotten, the counter sheets were actually in Ziploc bags.
That happened to me too. What is it? I just got a new copy of Red November, and the counter sheet, I believe, was in a Ziploc bag. And I think that the rulebook was in a separate Ziploc bag. So they had to put them in two different bags, even though they clearly could have fit in just one. Not that I was complaining or anything.
I can see the merit of including plastic bags, but I mean, and in some of these games there are certainly large components, but for most of the games, like, you're probably not going to need a bag that large because the counter sheets, you're not going to keep those. You're going to
No.
punch out very, very small pieces of cardboard, and then you're going to throw away usually the larger pieces of cardboard. So
And really, if you... Sorry, go ahead.
well, yeah, it kind of confuses me why they would bother to make those Ziploc baggies instead of just the old rip open ones that they used to have for that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Although it is nice to have those big bags, I just don't know what is supposed to go inside of them. Like, are you supposed to keep the rolls in this? Like, is that what the intention is? I mean, it's kind of nice, I guess, that the rule book doesn't get all cruddy or anything like that. But I mean, how often was this an issue for people? Like, that sounds like a personal issue more than an actual mechanical issue here. You know?
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things where like I know that all of these large bags I'll probably use eventually, but probably not for the games that they actually come in, and that seems a little odd to me.
That does seem a little odd. However, I'm thinking about I would probably end up using one of those rule book Ziploc baggy things. I would probably like to use those for like really large character cards, say like an Arkham Horror. Like right now with Arkham Horror, I just have like a freezer bag. This is actually another one we didn't think to mention is just open freezer bags, which are nice if you have like a lot of things or really big things or very few big things or something like that. But I can't remember which size it is that I have. But it's like I think it's like the medium-sized freezer bags, like the one that you would normally like twist tie together. They fit Arkham Horror player cards and Great Old One cards like perfectly. Like they're the exact size for them, and you can basically fit all the ones you ever owned into these bags here. But I could actually use those rulebook-sized Ziploc bags for those cards because they would definitely fit in those, and then I would actually have a Ziploc bag for that, and it would be a Fantasy Flight Ziploc bag.
Well, I mean, it's not like they have their initials, monogrammed on them or anything. You would be...
Maybe not on yours.
Well, I guess Ken's buying the special edition of these games then.
Yeah, I'm too good to just go to the dollar store and buy Ziploc bags. I have to go and get Fantasy Flight brand ones.
Yeah.
So to cap off this topic, we're just going to go into a little bit more of a casual mode here. We're just going to tell you a couple of our experiences in terms of organizing games and the horror stories of dealing with a disorganized box of pieces, cards, etc. So Jason, you have you're like the senior board gamist here, so you should probably take this one away first because I think you have probably the best one right here.
Well, I mean, there have been a few situations over the years. I mean, there's not a specific game I want to talk about, but I don't know, like. I guess it's mainly when I'm kind of playing with a new person for the first time and they don't kind of know how anal I am about my games. I've had a few situations where I've either I guess I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have to them while they were helping me clean up, and then later on I opened the box to actually play the game later on, and it's in quite a state to say the least. I mean, there was an incident. I actually mentioned it on one of our previous episodes, but where I had brought the Alhambra big box along to one of our conventions, and people were playing it, which is fine. And when I opened it up next, everything was all over the place, which I kind of wish they hadn't done that. But yeah, no, I mean I've had a few other situations over the years. I remember there was one time with Warrior Knights where I don't even know what I was doing when that was being put away. I guess I wasn't even there, but I was actually using freezer bags at the time. The ones that aren't Ziploc closed,
right, yeah.
and everything was everything was just kind of stuffed in there. I also found some beer bottle caps mixed in.
What?
Which, yeah, I'm thinking that might provide a bit of insight into why everything wasn't all that organized.
So is this like a Sherlock Holmes moment for you? You're like, a bottle cap. This is a clue as to why this game is a piece of crap right now.
Yeah, no, I kind of got the picture, but yeah, I basically had to sort everything out all again because it was all over the place. Recently, I had sort of the same thing go on with my Dungeon Quest board game. Again, I was using freezer bags, and again, I guess whenever it was put away the last time, people just sort of stuffed things in to try and get it put away quicker. So I had to sort everything out, and it's one of those things that really annoys me because the main reason why I organize this stuff is to make the games easier to set up. So when you're sitting down to play a game, you're all psyched. You open up the lid, expecting, okay, I'll just throw this stuff out and we'll be playing in 15 minutes, and then you look in and it's a jumbled mess. It really ticks you off because then you have to go through and sort it. And typically you're the only one who can sort it because, often you're the only one who's played the game before.
Oh man, that's one of my biggest beefs with organizing games, is that you have to get the game organized. Like, I think most people accept that. But when it comes time to put it away, half the time it's like you can get people to help you by, like, can you put these bits back and can you do this and such like that. And, I mean, most of the time people are pretty willing to help you put all the game away and stuff. And those are the people that I like, that I appreciate the most when it comes to these sort of games. But there's sometimes where it's just like the game is over and they're like, okay, see you later, I'm out. Or they'll be like, oh, I have no idea how you put this away, so see you later. And it's just kind of like, could you just stay and perhaps ask me? Like, could you like sort that? No, you're not even going to put your character bits away. Okay, that's cool, man. That's good. I'll just.
That really annoys me too,
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. Like, I do realize that a lot of people don't view this as a necessary thing. It's one of those things, especially people who haven't really played a lot of designer board games themselves, who don't own them. They kind of don't understand, but at the same time, like, it's really not that difficult. It's pretty easy, in my opinion, to figure out where things go. I have it clearly marked on bags for the most part, or I'm right there, and you can just ask me, where does this stuff go? So it really comes down to laziness, in my opinion, a lot of the time. And again, this is one of those things where there are certain situations where maybe somebody has actually stayed a lot later than they had intended, and they do have to take off really quickly, and that does happen. But at the same time, if you don't have to be at a doctor's appointment or something right away, is it going to kill you to stay 5 minutes and like maybe gather up one deck and put it in a bag?
Well, that said, though, I mean, like with like most people, if they have to leave early, they'll usually be like, do you mind, like the courtesy thing to do anyway is like, I kind of have to catch this bus. Do you mind if I split, because I kind of need to have to catch this bus? And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you have to catch a bus. Like, the next one's not coming for an hour. I'm not going to make you stay for 10 minutes setting up this game and have to wait another 50 for your next bus and everything. And that's reasonable. But it's another thing entirely when people just sort of like, they push themselves away from the table and like, yep, that game is done. I washed my hands of this. Good day to you, sir. Deal with your own stuff.
Yeah, and the ones that really annoy me, though, are not the ones that leave. They're the ones that stay and don't do it.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like, they're just sort of sitting around. They're just sort of watching you put everything away. And like, they don't even really ask. They're just sort of like, sitting around mulling about, talking about stuff, and you're trying to put the game away, and they're not even like, oh, can I help you with anything? Like, is there anything you want me to grab? And if there's sometimes where I know where something goes, and I can just put it back quicker than they could anyway. And if someone offers, I appreciate when someone offers more than anything else, even if I'm not necessarily going to take them up on the offer. I mean, Jason, you and me have some pretty, like, intricate setups for our games sometimes, so like I appreciate when some people don't actually. I appreciate the fact anyway that a lot of people don't understand where all this stuff is going to go back, but I also appreciate it even more when they ask rather than just assume that I want to do it all on my own.
Well, yeah, and no, it's I don't know, it's one of those things that really annoys me. If I see there's 3 or 4 people gathered around the table, kind of picking things up, and then there's 2 people like standing 5 feet away talking about a sports event that they both saw or something like that.
Oh, that local sports team. Oh, I hope they scrimmaged enough yards this time.
It's just one of those things that, like, hey guys, you can presumably talk and put things away at the same time. So you see where I'm going with this?
Exactly.
It's again, just one of those things that kind of perks me.
I know with, so going back to, kind of reeling us back to just, like, random horror stories and such, one of the games that stands out in our group right now, and we were talking about this a little bit off the mics, stands out as a game that seems basically insurmountable as far as organization goes, is Betrayal at the House on the Hill. And this used to be one of our favorite games back in the day, but good God, that thing is a mess right now. I'm sorry, Jason. Like, I feel partly responsible for that, too, because I was with you, like, for a good chunk of those games. But, like, that thing is a mess. Like, if you try to do the scenarios now, it's, like, almost impossible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to be like, okay, so we need this token, so let's sort through the 500 tokens laying loose in the box.
To find one token.
Yeah, and then, oftentimes you'll just end up saying, you know what, it says we need a heart token, it's going to be a zombie token.
We're just going to use zombie tokens for heart tokens this time, it's fine.
Yeah.
We need mic check tokens? Okay, use, I don't know, spore tokens. Here you go, we got a lot of spore tokens. Use this for mic check tokens.
On Board Game Geek, I know that there is, somebody actually did at one point post a sort of forum topic, or it might have been a file, I can't remember, but it's, basically how to actually organize that game, and I don't know, it just seems kind of silly to have somebody post a separate article about how to organize it. Just,
It does seem a little intense for that kind of thing. This game definitely needs it, though. There's we should note the fact that this game needs a hand. Like, you need a hand trying to figure this stuff out. Trying to figure it out on your own will drive you mad. Well, that's about all we have to say today about board gaming organization. If you have your own ideas for board gaming organization, please leave comments on us. Send us an email or whatever you want. We'd love to see them because, quite frankly, you can never be too organized when it comes to these board games. The quicker you can get into them and the quicker you can get back out of them, all the better. In the meantime, though, we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you have some good games until the next time we talk to you. Bye-bye.